Oh, sorry, my phone just went. Ugh.
That's all right. That's what we have editing for.
Yeah, cool. It was me throwing it into the corner.
Look, you probably killed someone.
Right? Yeah, they're fine.
Hello everyone, welcome to this, which is a new thing which we're doing. So we're doing a Tale of Four Gamers, which is basically a kind of community build project for those who weren't witness to the original kind of White Dwarf magazine articles and so on this. And basically it's a community build project where four of us are getting together. So I'll be introducing the guests in a minute, and where we're basically getting together and getting into the new Horus Heresy 30k game, which has dropped very recently, and which I'm sure, unless you've been hiding under some sort of huge hobby rock or in some sort of hobby bunker, you will have noticed, because it's been sort of literally everywhere. And you know, when there's a bandwagon, occasionally it's good to jump on one. So here we all are to jump on the bandwagon. Right, brilliant. So I'll just sort of go around and get the folks here to introduce themselves and maybe tell us a little bit of something about them or their hobby. So I'm going to go first with the Constant Grenadier, or Ed.
Hi there. I have been doing 40k related stuff since I was a kid, so I've got the first edition of White Dwarf that I ever bought. Has Heresy on the front, so clearly it was meant to be. I actually collected orcs at the time, but yeah, I've been meaning to get into the Heresy when first time around. Didn't have the money all the time at that particular point in time, and yeah, I'm looking to do sort of something grounded in the story and the narrative.
Right, thank you very much. Let's go on to Lanoon's Bread, otherwise known as Aaron.
Yeah, I'm Aaron. Yeah, I've been playing various hobby stuff probably since I was about 10, which is far too long now. Ed, you actually really inspired me there, so I just reached back into my kind of little White Dwarf library and got my first White Dwarf, just a little bit after. But you can see it's pretty beat up. It's actually shortly before the Tale of Four Gamers, so it's really exciting to be doing this and yeah, to be involved. So yeah, looking forward to it.
How appropriate. I've got a pile, I can see them from where I'm sitting opposite me, a big pile of White Dwarfs, and I'm not going to waste everybody's time now by going through and finding the first one that I read, because you guys were very well prepared for that. Or just it seemed to, be quite convenient. Maybe it was just waiting there on the side. Right, over to, J. Hammerthetank Paints. I think I've said that wrong.
You have not. Hello there, James. I've been sort of involved in 40k since I was like 11. I don't really want to think about how long ago that was, but I feel like it was not as long as I think it was. So I started in 2011 with the Heresy, went to the first like Warhammer Fest or Games Day when it was launched, and bought an entire Iron Warriors army just there and then, which my bank balance has regretted ever since.
Wow.
Because that was like 17-year-old me at the time. But
paying off the mortgage.
Yeah, it could have been a mortgage or a Heresy army. I know which one I went for. But either way, it's kind of really exciting to have a new edition, because I've been playing it since its initial release, and being gone to a few events, had been involved in communities across like Cambridgeshire, Peterborough, where I live back in Swindon, and in London as well. And it's good to see sort of new faces and new people driving a brand new system, and being excited about the narrative, less about the meta, which Heresy was kind of leaning into a bit towards the end. So it's great to see a real, authentic, refreshing system where everyone's got new armies, new exciting focuses, and all about the narrative. It's great.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Get all the noobs in like me who haven't played Heresy before, and we haven't got a clue what's going on, so we can't really metagame it because don't know enough.
Exactly.
Yeah, that'd be good. Right. I'll quick. Right. Well, we've done the intros. I'll do a quick, just kind of explanation of the format and kind of what we're doing for those who aren't sort of familiar with the whole Tale of Four Gamers thing, which was queued up. So, in short, I'll try and keep it fairly brief. So, essentially, this is a format that came from White Dwarf back in the day, and basically, it's a kind of they did it as a sort of had four gamers, and they went through a sort of process of building their army, kind of bit by bit, and each month they had a specific kind of budget and so on. We're not going to do the budget part in terms of how much we have to spend each month, because we're not a marketing exercise trying to prove to people that you can afford Warhammer with your pocket money every month. We're basically just going to be sort of using it as a way to, I guess, kind of a little bit of accountability, to kind of make progress, but a lot of it just hopefully to share some ideas and have some fun and share it with everyone. So in terms of and it's worth saying as well, worth paying homage to our friend Ian over at ArhPriest. He's also been doing some Tale of 4 Gamer stuff, and I must admit, I saw his rendition of the original White Dwarf and thought, this is a brilliant format. It'd be lovely to see more people doing this in the community. So here we are, and as they say, imitation is the best form of flattery. Anyway, so the structure of it. So 6 months long is the idea. So we should run for 6 months, which means we should finish roughly in December. But I mean, it might end up being January, because we all know what December's like. We'll get to the last couple of weeks and find that we've got lots of family things to do and stuff. So normally 6 months. We'll do some fortnightly check-ins. So we'll do something a bit like this every fortnight, possibly a little bit shorter than this first one, because we won't have to explain the concept. So the idea is to get to 2,500 points by December, so we can have a big game. So the first 2 months is 1,000 points, with a bit of a focus on troops in HQs, although we're not going to hold ourselves to that. If you want to jump out and paint something else, then this is meant to be fun. We're not meant to kind of like be enforcing particular rules on people, so do as you will. And then the idea is the second set of months, so months 3 and 4, will be another 1,000 points, with an emphasis perhaps on kind of elites and fast attack, and maybe start getting some vehicles in. So that's just sort of building out from your kind of core, hopefully. Although I guess if you're a Death Guard, maybe it's just more infantry, but I guess we'll come to that. The last 500 points will be in month 5, so that's maybe where you kind of bring in some of your big nasties or anything that you're just kind of finishing off. And then the final month, we sort of discussed, didn't we, a little bit, how none of us have a huge amount of kind of 40k or 30k themed terrain. So we thought it'd be good to do a terrain piece, maybe each themed to our armies, and then we can use that in the big game, which will be fun. And then obviously in the last month as well, we'll need to fit in the big game, and maybe we'll be able to fit in some smaller games along the way, some sort of escalation style. Or if we do some doubles, maybe we can have enough points to do some small things on the way. But a celebration game at the end, and who knows, maybe we'll make it to Warhammer World, maybe we won't. Let's leave that to the logistics of when we get further to that end of things, and not get ahead of ourselves. And then, finally, it's worth saying, like, there probably will be a bit of flex in this. We're all here to have fun. We're not here to kind of be, kind of held to something too rigid. So that's the plan, and I guess we'll see how far we get with it. Hopefully, pretty far. So that's the kind of concept of what we're doing. So I guess now what we're going to do is we're just going to go around and do a quick sort of, 4 or 5 minutes each on what we're collecting, so which legion we've picked, why we're sort of interested in the 30k, any kind of theme or focus for the army, and then a bit on kind of progress.
Really nice to be part of Tale of 4 Gamers after reading so many iterations of it over the years. Though it would be nice if we could have a £25 a month budget, as in the original one, but I just don't think that's kind of physically doable these days. But yeah, I'll give it a go.
Up to 140 on a box set already, so I think you've blown your budget for the first month.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. It's quite a lot of stuff in there though, so I think it'll be all right. Yeah, but generally, so I picked Ultramarines, and I've picked Ultramarines because of the great scene in No Fear. Just Ultramarines screaming in the void, Grillerman with his helmet off, just like getting like void exposure and just punching unpowered power fists right through word bearers. It's just really, really fantastic. And Ultramarines, on one hand, boring Roman-inspired legion, and then, boring Roman-inspired legion.
They do have a bit of a rep, don't they? As the kind of slightly almost like vanilla flavor, kind of perhaps undeserved reputation as a sort of vanilla flavor. And
also, they're the cop Marines, right? They're like the police, the police Marines, and I'm not on board with that. But kind of sprinkle throughout all the fluff and all these bits that are in the typical Games Workshop way, where they say all this variety and then they model absolutely none of it. There's lots of bits about the Ultramarines and the Heresy, about where they recruited from, of all over Terra initially. There's a lot of mentions of like the mid-Afric kind of hive conglomerates and stuff like that, and how there's warrior cultures all over kind of old Earth that have fed into the Ultramarines. And then the models that you get are just Roman. So my kind of idea with this is going to be having these post kind of betrayal at Calth, dirty, disgusting, battered Marines using all sorts of armor cultures from all over the world, that kind of influence, different patterns, different ways of painting, and just kind of going crazy with it really, and seeing if at the end I can have an army of Ultramarines that looks really badass, but doesn't just look like Roman policemen. Just give that a go. Why not?
Is there anything you're sort of anticipating will be, I don't know, sort of tricky, or that you're sort of approaching with a little bit more trepidation?
I mean, there's 40 beakies in the box that's being guarded by my cat right now. And, I've painted 5 of them, and when I painted 5, I've painted 4 and 1 old Space Crusade Marine. And so the difficulty for me is going to be sitting down and getting another 20 tactical Marines painted and not getting distracted. Look, she's off to check on the progress. So it's going to be getting the big units. That's going to be the difficult thing for me, because I kind of flutter around with hobby projects. I
mean, James, you're our veteran of Heresy. The big units seem to be a thing in Heresy in a way that they're less so in 40k and less so, I think, in other games.
Yeah, it's great for objective-driven games, and you can have 20-man squads of Astartes. It's not to love, apart from when they're all in Mark III armor and you spend 4 hours doing trim on a single Marine. It's always fun. But yeah, it's much more less about bringing a company, more about bringing a full army, battalion, whatever equivalent, with 20 squads, with nuncio boxes and banners. It's a great way of exploring the more militaristic side of the Astartes than a squad and dynamic poses, which is quite cool. But it is a bit of a challenge hobby-wise, because there are Astartes you still want to make them look unique and characterful, each of them, but there's 20 of them, not 10 of them. And they're not as expensive as they are in 40k points-wise. You're more likely to see more on the board, unless you're doing like an elite army. So it's all about sort of getting the finesse of a batch painting process, which anyone who's ever played Napoleonics or anything like that is kind of okay with when you eventually start painting it.
Are you okay with batch painting Napoleonics, Aaron?
I'm pretty okay with it. In fact, I would say I'm too okay with it. And I think this is going to be my kind of stumbling block of, I'm going to go from one hobby project of batch painting 20 8-foot tall guys in blue armor, and then my break from that is going to be batch painting 40 5-foot tall guys in blue greatcoats. So I think the issue for me is probably going to be focusing on blue and trying to work out ways of doing blue in like 6 different ways to keep my interest. It's going to be a lot of sponge painting, maybe some painting using with a toothbrush. No airbrushes. I don't trust the science behind them.
Okay.
High pressure air blows my mind. So
no spoon painting as came up yesterday in our chat.
Maybe some spoon and knife painting.
Okay.
Yeah, all sorts.
Gonna mix it up.
Yeah.
Okay. Brill. All right. Let's jump on to Ed maybe, and tell us a bit about why you're into 30k and what your Legio's up to.
Well, similarly, leading with the fiction, I really, in the first 3 books, and also Flight of the Eisenstein, I really thought Death Guard were cool. Like the idea of, I have this problem about infantry heavy armies. I have an Imperial Guard army, Astra Militarum, and obviously I'm doing Napoleonics as well. I'm doing a different colour because I'm doing British for Napoleonics, and I'm doing Death Guard for 30k. So yeah, I'm not going to go colour mad. Although who knows? They do have some red in, which I'll explain in a minute. But yeah, so that's what I wanted to do. I also wanted to try and do a loyalist Death Guard army, so survivors of Isstvan 3. And I think I like the idea of having a unit that go the long way round to get to Terra, so they end up on the just small group of survivors, pick up other groups of survivors along the way, and then you just end up at the end of the Heresy with about 5 guys with armor nicked from every single armor mark and with sort of 1,000-yard stairs. So that's kind of what I want in terms of how they look. I wanted to mix up all the armor marks as much as possible to give you the idea that these are Marines who've survived multiple battles, have picked up armor from different sources, but still have a kind of coherency as to who they are. They haven't quite lost their identity as pre-heresy Death Guard. Although having said that, we've discussed in terms of doing the narrative, having it would be convenient having some non-loyalist Death Guard. So I'm thinking the independent company splits halfway. So you end up with
the Death Guard can't make their mind up on whose side they're fighting for.
Well, I think if you ended up in Ultramar and you're a Death Guard and you're all about loyalty, and then you think, I'm staying loyal to the Emperor, and the Ultramarines are staying loyal to the Emperor, we're going to have to team up. And then you see Guilliman putting Sanguinus on the throne, you go, well, sod this, start my own empire. So I'm thinking they start off as loyalists, and then they go renegade, and so you've got a bunch of them that stick with the Ultramarines and a bunch of them that decide to set up their own empire and essentially go Black Shield. So we're talking about fractions and fractions and fractions of small group until you end up like.
I love it though. It's a brilliant narrative book there. So they're basically you've gone for the sort of they're striking out on their own option, which I always thought was quite a fascinating kind of option within the kind of heresy canon of, Space Marines who basically just go off and think, well, you know what, we've got our own corner of the galaxy here. We will set up our own little, I don't know, despot or kind of little state and run things ourselves. So I think someone else.
It's in the middle, yeah. It's. I mean, I've also got. Well, I bought it off Aaron, the first book, and there's reference to a very small handful of survivors, and then you end up going back to Ian's point, like how do you make an army that is within the setting, but it also has its own specific look. So I thought drawing the idea of a small group of survivors who then link up with other like garrison groups of Death Guard that might be around or other units. And what I wanted to try and do as well in terms of their color scheme is to keep the Death Guard colors. Obviously, they'll get rid of green because that's, I want to say Barbarossa. It's one of those words I've only ever read and not said. The Death Guard's homeworld of, I want to say Barbaros. Anyway, I'm sure we'll get comments below if I've got it wrong. Barbaros. Anyway,
Barbaros.
Thank you. There we go.
Barnabas.
So, Barnabas.
Barnaby.
Get rid of Barnaby. So I reckon they'll have got rid of the green because that's what that colour represents within the Death Guard. They've kept the white. It's all scuffed up to hell because they don't. Death Guard don't do resprays. But they'll use the red right arm of Old Albia, which is the Dusk Raiders. So they don't go full grey because that looks like too much like cultivating. Nothing's looking pretty. Everything's roughshod and bits and bobs. But they've kept that point of unity. So that's that in terms of the colour scheme. That's what I wanted to go for and the sort of reason why. So yeah, that's broadly what my plan is.
Brilliant. And you're presumably going to have plenty of infantry in a sort of Death Guardy horde.
Well, I was looking at the right score, and the Reaping is the one I'm going to go for because it's the non-traitor one. So yeah, that is, as I understand it, you get some vet squads can be chosen as troops. The idea is like a kind of column attack kind of thing, like again, Napoleonics, the old guard, and well, all French Napoleonic forces. And I get some rad grenades, which I think we'll be talking about in a bit. So I get some rad grenade action as well.
On that bombshell, shall we move on to James? And I think we're going to hear a lot more about everything to do with war crimes.
Yes, on the topic of phosphex, I've picked the totally loyal and wonderfully legitimate Legion of the Dark Angels, who are completely loyal. I won't have any more questions. Yes. But nonetheless, they've been a Legion I've been drawn to for a while. When I was very young, I think Dark Angels were the first Space Marine army I bought. And with all the ridiculous plastic veterans kit you had all those years ago, which was great. We had all the parts and there was so much fun, and 13-year-old me was going wild with that. So it's kind of a bit of a return to that. But unlike both Ed and Aaron, I've gone for the sort of a unified look. I'm not so keen on doing a shattered legion of smashed apart guys because I've got an Iron Warriors army. I've done that. Instead, I'm going for pristine Dark Angels in their blacks and silvers and reds, because they're such a striking color scheme and they've got such a unique heraldry. But with that in mind, I'm doing Eschaton Imperative, the rite of war where you can take destroyers as troops and commit war crimes, and it's okay because it's 30k, and that's what happens to Falzinos.
I love Aaron's face on the phrase "war crimes are okay."
Don't quote me on that. But nonetheless, it's an interesting rite of war, which gives me a chance to use units I've not used before in Heresy, which is destroyers, interemptors, really showcase the heraldry and all the unique stuff, and bring out some of the nastier toys like rad grenades, which are fun, phosphex, all of these things. I shouldn't emphasize how fun these are. It's just troubling for me.
Anything particularly that any particular pitfalls or anything you're sort of not looking forward to so much in the army, or is it all gravy?
It's not so gravy at all, really, because Eschaton Imperative is all about destroyers, as I said, and the only kit that's sold are Mark IV destroyers, and I'm being really picky. I'm only doing Mark III Marines. I'm one of those people, and as such, I'm having to convert all of my destroyers from various kits, Mark III kits, whether it's trimming down bolters, cutting them in half to make bolt pistols, or buying the Assault Marines from Forge World and such. So it's quite a slog. The unit of destroyers I've got next to me, only 5 of them have taken parts from about 3 or 4 different kits to get them where they are now. So the basic troops are going to be quite complicated, but because it's quite a points heavy list, I don't think I'm going to be having that many of them. I think the other thing is working out what other units will work alongside this. What transports do I want? Do I want rhinos or land raiders? That sort of thing. It's an interesting rite of war. I've not done anything like this before. It's a bit of an experiment for me, I guess.
Brill. Well, it's a good, new edition of Heresy. It's a good time, isn't it, to experiment and kind of throw the new rulebook out the window and I guess try something new. When you were mentioning that you're sort of going for the pristine Mark III armor, I couldn't help but in my head think about all those rivets you're going to have to be counting on that ornate Mark III armor.
Yeah, I should have mentioned that as the number one difficulty are rivets. Because I'm not leaving them black; they've got to be silver because I really like that look of them standing out. And that's the whole thing I really like about Dark Angels and the Heresy scheme is the sort of deep black, and then bright silvers and bright reds and whites and checkered patterns and obscure heraldries that make sense to no one except the Dark Angels Legion, which is going to be a great fun to experiment with and paint. Sort of thinking, giving each unit heraldry, that sort of thing, going back to almost medieval history for a bunch of guys sitting around with jetpacks with phosphex bombs. So it's a curious juxtaposition that is pure Warhammer to me.
Perhaps you could work that into the coat of arms somewhere, sort of stylized, phosphex bomb or something. I think the heraldry should be brilliant. I mean, Dark Angels are a brilliant opportunity to do that, aren't they? Inject that kind of because I guess in a way that's one of the things, even within the 40k game with the chapters of Space Marines, one of the appeals, I guess, is that you can bring your own little kind of, each chapter, as it were, or legio kind of borrows from a different piece of often history, but not always history. And so you can kind of get that angle in, and the medieval angle seems to fit the Dark Angels really well.
Yeah, really does.
I might just jump in with mine then now, because I think I'm tail end Charlie on this one. So basically for my guys, so I'm going Sons of Horus, and there's 2 reasons really. So one is largely to do with the kind of the fiction and the narrative. So as mentioned before, I'm a bit of a heresy newbie, so I've just jumped into the Black Library line of novels, and I'm on the 3rd one currently. I'm really enjoying the way that the narrative, following sort of Loken and the sort of captains and the Mournival and so on in the Sons of Horus, like it really brings the story to life to have those kind of characters. And I think particularly in Horus Rising, Dan Abnett, who I won't go on about now, but I could go on for a long time because I think he's a great author. Definitely probably my favorite out of the Games Workshop stable. And he does a brilliant job, I think, of kind of bringing those characters to life and kind of giving the setting, sort of bringing a bit of, he's good at world building, to put it succinctly, and he kind of really fleshes out some of those bits in the universe where normally you might think it's a little bit shonky, and kind of rounds it out and kind of explains things. So anyway, in short, the narrative has kind of caught me. So when I was looking at this and it came out, I was very much thinking sort of follow the fiction and follow through the Sons of Horus in those novels, do a force that kind of reflects some of that. So, and then secondly, the second reason is just really, it's got something to do with painting, but it's also just, I really like that kind of green-blue color. I really, I just really like it, and I think it's a really, it's one of those shades where like every sort of model I've seen out there on social media at the moment is a slightly different shade of kind of green blue or green, you know, and it seems to be a kind of endless versions and iterations of it, which I think from a sort of painting point of view is just great fun to sort of try and jump in there and find your own perfect, you know, green blue. So that's the other one, really, just from a painting point of view. And in terms of the sort of kind of theme and format of the army, to be honest, I'm still playing it quite loosey goosey on the sort of actual composition of the army, really, to be honest. Like, I usually approach most products from a sort of modeler's point of view rather than a kind of hobbyist point of view, rather than necessarily from a sort of rules point of view. So I'm sort of at the minute just kind of working on the tacticals and sort of starting there and just kind of trying to get the color scheme down. And I'll sort of worry, I think, about, I mean, I know there's going to be lots of Reavers, that much I'm sure of, because I think they look pretty kick-ass. So there will be Reavers, and I would like to get some Terminators in, and maybe if there's a way of getting some sort of Justarian Terminators or something into the list, that would be pretty good fun. But I need to go and study my get hold of a copy and study my Liber Hereticus before I can quite figure out exactly how this is all going to hang together. That's the kind of plan, and really just in terms of how things are, the sort of look of the army, quite heavily weathered, I think, is actually where I'm heading with it. So I really enjoy kind of cracking out the oils and the enamels and stuff. So they're going to look like they've been fighting quite a long war. Things I'm most looking forward to, I guess, with the kind of army, I'm really looking forward to doing some character models. I think I've slightly cornered myself out of the character series because I've chosen to go for slightly overscale, sort of true scale Marines. So I may have kind of made it so the character series won't quite work, which was in retrospect a bit dumb, but I've started now. But interesting opportunity, you know, with every mistake comes an opportunity. So I've been having some fun with Blender recently and doing some sort of digital kind of kit bashing and sculpting. So I might just have a go at my own take on some of these characters and sort of see how it goes. So that could be, you know, an interesting hobby opportunity. If I can't use the official models, I'll just kind of have to put something together. So, you know, necessity is the mother of invention, as they say.
If the official models are a bit too small, you can just have them a little further away. This is fine. You just have like a front line and then a second line of Forge World resin. But your front line is because your 3D guys, you're doing them a disservice because they are chunky and they're really good. And through the magic of editing, I'm going to say we can now see a picture of them.
Yes, through the magic of editing.
Yeah, there we go. Interesting to me that we're going to have 3 really beaten up, heavily weathered armies, and then one straight off the assembly line in full kind of regalia. I think it says quite a lot about like where the hobby and where the modelling kind of hobby is at the moment, right? And that maybe 10 years ago it would have been the other way around. You get one person who's doing quite heavily weathered, but yeah, that's kind of not the fashion at the moment.
I didn't mention it earlier, but one of the reasons I've gone for the clean look is in the Heresy itself, the Dark Angels were kept quite separate. They were loitering at the background. They were dealing with themselves and not really contributing massively to the Heresy. I'll probably outrage some Dark Angel fans. But I mean,
you've got to be murdered by Luther.
Well, I know Johnson, I don't know which one.
I mean, given they are heretics, it probably is for the best, you know.
Yeah, but I wanted to go for a right of war, an army that represents Lionel Johnson rushing towards Terra. He's not actually rushing. I think there's a little bit of procrastination on his part. I still want to know who wins because I'm not really loyal.
I want to pick the right horse in this race so that I come out at the start. Sorry, at the finish on the right side. It's quite an interesting way of putting it.
And the idea is that he's going up harrying the traitors as they advance on Terra, burning planets, destroying homeworlds, destroying supply lines and such. So his guys, they're not going to be beaten. They've not been fighting the long war with traitors and loyalists. They're kind of at the background coming. They're fully refreshed and they're sort of ready, but they're not quite as experienced again as fighting other Astartes as others are. It's quite an interesting take because you've got 3 leaders here who have been fighting the heresy since it began, and then there's mine coming along like, hi guys, we're late to this party.
We're late to this party, and also, whose side should we be on? give us your best offer.
Asking the questions.
One of my favourite bits of fluff was Lionel Johnson offering Perturabo some artillery and then saying, you're going to use these on the right side, right? And that doesn't even say who the right side is. It just gives Perturabo the guns that he uses against the Imperial Palace. It's just perfectly representative of Dark Angels, and they're slightly ambiguous. So a lot of it is a joke. Like, it's an in-joke in the Warhammer community of, they're loyalists or they're traitors, but there's a complexity to them that I really like. And you can play that field of not quite loyalist, not quite traitor, which is funny for the First Legion and the First Astartes. Like, you'd think they'd be the most loyal, but they're very ambiguous, and I really enjoy that.
That's a very good point. Go on,
I think they're playing into that a bit more with this, or maybe not a bit more, but it's kind of a bit more baked into the rules this time, right? Like, every loyalist legion has a traitor warlord trait, and every traitor legion has that loyalist warlord trait. I think is there maybe one that doesn't? I mean, I was surprised to see. Too. Oh, yeah, the Dark Angels are all neutral ones, right?
Yeah, they're all neutral. I enjoy that.
Yeah, so there's a lot there that you can do. Like, I could see this kind of force emerging as kind of a separatist Ultramarines thing, maybe. I mean, I want to see where the kind of fluff takes me and where all this stuff comes from. But it's all there in the rule book, which is really nice. Like, opening it up like that.
Looking at our sort of fluff, we're looking at Imperial Secundus and the splinter of Ultramar during the Shadow Crusade, which is quite interesting and exciting. Because the Dark Angels were there, the Ultramarines were there, everyone was there. So it could be a new area to explore that's not really been touched upon. And then we can have a lot more of a sandbox to build new fluff and new armies and interesting, exciting things.
The big thing that definitely. I mean, one thing I would like to do once we get cults and militias through is to include some of my guard in that, and where they fit in would be interesting to see if that can weave into the narrative. Defending planets with a bunch of dudes with flashlights, essentially, being mowed down. I think already in the chats that we've had, I think narrative ideas for how we might weave these battles together have sort of come through. So yeah.
I think it's the interesting thing, right? Because I mean, we're all we all play historicals here. Like, that's kind of
we can all admit it to each other in this.
Yeah, it's a safe space. It's kind of, I guess, how we kind of met to get this stuff sorted. And this is interesting because it's not historicals, right? No matter what people actually say about, this is Games Workshop's historicals, it is not. We still have an infinite space to play with the narrative, to do this. Maybe my Ultramarines are the Ultramarines that are on Terra. Maybe there's like 1,000 Ultramarines that are already there. It could be all these things because this is 10,000 years in the past from 40k and 30 and 28,000 years in the future from now. Like 28,000 years ago, we were using stone tools and we didn't have written language. So like, we can do anything. It's fantastic. We don't need to stick to any kind of prescriptive narrative. It's awesome. Because it's not real.
And you also have within 40k, and I assume he's still around in 30k, the unreliable narrator who is telling you the story of what we have now. Essentially, are the histories handed down within the Imperium about what happened. Probably, no doubt, in one of those big inquisitorial vaults with lots of encoding. What is it? Obsidian level clearance or whatever from the Eisenhorn novels. And we have those sort of accounts or whatever. But who knows what happened? In the fake history of the 30k universe. Without going on too much of a history rant, all you have to do is look at histories now of things that happened a couple of hundred years ago, and you talk to a different historian, and you'll get a completely different version of what happened and even what happened sometimes. So, no, it's a very good point. There's a huge narrative space here, and we don't even necessarily have to, even quite big points within the story. You don't necessarily, I think, have to take those percent kind of face value. I think there's room for interpretation. Thanks, guys, for joining on this. It's going to be a really fun, little hobby adventure, where we can hopefully all, get inspired off each other and get towards that golden game at the end, and not get too distracted along the way, hopefully. So thanks for jumping on board, and we will do another one of these in 2 weeks is the plan. Let's see how far we've got in 2 weeks, but I'm kind of mildly confident that I will have some progress. So I think you guys will as well. So.